Sorry, the member for Gembrook.
Thank you very much, Acting Speaker. And if you want to hear anything why Labor is who they are, they want to stop a debate that is about defending democracy in Victoria to introduce a new tax. Because they want to make sure that they can get the money that they've already spent and wasted. Now, the one thing that I wanted to speak on this bill for, and there's 15 people on this side and haven't had the opportunity. That's 15 local communities that have been cut out of this debate. And the one thing that continuously gets raised in this debate is those on the other side who have got the speaking notes directly from the Premier. It specifically says they've got oversight. The oversight put in place is a committee appointed by the Premier, can be dismissed by the Premier, at a decision by the Premier, and doesn't have to take the advice of that committee, does the Premier. Let's put into perspective how good that's gone in history. Some of you may know Jane Garrett. I'm sure some of you on that side know the member of the Upper House, who went and spoke to the Premier and said, I don't support legislation for the CFA. Gone. Sacked. Out. No longer in Cabinet. Some of you may remember Jenny Mikakos. Spoke up against the Premier. Gone. Sacked. No longer allowed to speak up. Some of you may remember Lucinda Nolan. Lucinda Nolan, the CEO of the CFA, spoke up against some of the issues that the Premier wanted to bring in. Gone. Sacked. Got rid of by the Premier. Or you may even remember Joe Buffone. Joe Buffone was an amazing person in our community for emergency services in Victoria, spoke up against the government. Gone. Sacked. Got rid of. Or you could remember the entire CFA board, who spoke up and said they didn't want anything in relation to what was happening in the CFA at the time. Gone, sacked, dismissed, disrespected, absolutely and utterly disrespected on the way out. The Emergency Services Minister, Mr Molino, who is the member for Monbulk, came out when some of these people spoke up, and all he did was try to tear apart their character. And that is how Labor operates. That is what you are trying to stop. Why do we want this legislation? Why don't we want this legislation? It's directly because of the evidence and the actions of the Victorian Labor Party, who have continued to prove time and time again that every time someone speaks up against the government or against the Premier, sacked, gone, dismissed. And that is a major and massive concern from people in the community. And here's the example today. Now, 15 people, which represents 15 communities. That represents over nearly 1 million people in our community who don't have a voice now. They have been silenced. Every person in my electorate has been silenced by the Labor Party in Victoria when the biggest bill to come through this House in my 11 years, I heard the member for Warrandyte in his 15 years. I will assume there's people on the other side who have been here since the 90s, and it's the biggest bill since they've been here as well. Because every person on that side knows the power of this bill. Every person. And if you don't know the power of the bill, you only need to refer to the Victorian Bar, who's actually written a letter on this, and over the past 24 hours, the Victorian Bar has become aware of a bill to amend the Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2020 in respect of, amongst other things, pandemic management. The Minister for Health Bill summary claims the department and an expert reference group undertook targeted consultation. Again, another lie by Labor. Another lie by Labor. 45-minute Teams meeting, a 45-minute Teams meeting with a promise to catch up to discuss it again, and at that meeting was nothing around the pandemic legislation that's before the House today. Nothing about it. And Acting Speaker, I know you represent out in the area of I live, Casey and Cardinia. I know the member from Narre Warren South who was very vocal a second ago talking about the communities of Casey and Cardinia. Let me assure you, the residents of Casey, he doesn't live out near Casey, he lives in St Kilda. Let me assure you, if you wanted to come for a drive through those areas during the pandemic and see the businesses closed, the schools closed, the kids struggling with mental health, all of the issues that are happening down in their area and the businesses that are slowly sliding away because they can't get support from anyone, They don't want legislation that is going to allow lockdowns for 2022. And when the Premier has come out and specifically said that the new thing now is going to be a third dose, there's nothing surer than this legislation is his plan to lock down Victoria until he gets his way with a third dose for those in 2022, and we cannot accept that in Victoria.
The member for Narre Warren South.